"We're moving in tomorrow. Your dad said it's fine." That's what my stepmother told me at 11:47 p.m., the very first night I slept in the beach house I'd spent 12 years saving for. $4.8 million. Every penny mine. And before I could even respond, she added, "If you don't like it, you can find somewhere else." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. My hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped the phone. But I smiled. Because I knew exactly what I was going to prepare for their arrival. What Victoria didn't know was that her phone call wasn't just rude. It was the last mistake she'd ever make under the Beckett name. And the surprise I prepared? It took 220 people, one gala stage, and a single manila envelope to deliver. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. My name is Bonnie Beckett. I'm 34 years old and I live in Charleston, South Carolina. Now, let me take you back to March 2025, the week I quit my job and thought I was finally free. My mother died when I was 17. Ovarian cancer, diagnosed in April, gone by September. 5 months. That's all the warning I got before the person who loved me most in this world simply wasn't in it anymore. My father, Gerald Beckett, was a well-respected real estate attorney in Charleston's low-country legal circle. He grieved the only way he knew how, by working until he couldn't feel anything. 2 years later, he married Victoria Hale. At first, she was warm, attentive. She brought homemade lemon bars to Sunday dinners and called me sweetheart, with what I genuinely believed was sincerity. But 6 months after the wedding, the lemon bars stopped, and so did the sweetness. It started small. Victoria suggested I move out of my childhood bedroom, the one with the window seat my mother had built. So Paige, her daughter from a previous marriage, could have a proper dressing room. I looked at my father, waiting for him to say something. He squeezed my shoulder. "It's just a room, kiddo." It was never just a room. By Christmas 2011, I wasn't in the family photo. Victoria positioned everyone in front of the fireplace and somehow there was no space left when I walked in. "Oh," she said, adjusting Paige's collar. "I thought you said you didn't want to be in it." I paid for my own college. Full scholarship to the College of Charleston, plus 2 part-time jobs, one at a bookstore, and 1 tutoring statistics. Paige went to a private university in Savannah, tuition fully covered by my father. When I once asked him why the difference, he looked confused. "Victoria said you preferred being independent." Her favorite phrase, "I'm not being mean, I'm being practical." She used that line every single time she cut me out of something, and for 15 years, I let her. Here's the thing about being invisible inside your own family. It gives you an extraordinary amount of privacy. After graduating summa cum laude in finance, I took a junior analyst position at Meridian Strategy Group, a boutique consulting firm in downtown Charleston. Within 3 years, I was leading client engagements. Within 7, I was a senior strategy consultant managing restructuring projects for companies with revenues north of $200 million. By the time I left, my base salary plus performance bonuses totaled roughly $340,000 a year. Victoria never knew. She never asked. At family dinners, the ones I was invited to, which grew fewer each year, she'd wave her hand when my work came up. "Bonnie does something with spreadsheets." Then she'd turn to Paige. "Tell them about your new marketing campaign, sweetheart. Paige is the successful one." I let her believe that. I let all of them believe it. Starting in 2013, I funneled every dollar I didn't need into index funds and 2 rental properties, a duplex in West Ashley and a townhouse near the medical university. I lived modestly. I drove a 7-year-old Honda. I wore clothes from Target to Thanksgiving dinners at my father's house, while Victoria showed off a new Cartier bracelet each year. By March 2025, my net worth sat at approximately $5.2 million. Not a soul in my family had any idea. The only person who knew everything was Marcus Trent, my attorney since 2019, a sharp-eyed specialist in real estate law and financial fraud. It was Marcus who first flagged something strange in July 2024 while reviewing my father's property records for an unrelated inheritance question. "There's a transfer deed for the Mount Pleasant house," he told me. "Gerald's signature on it looks off. I'm saving a notarized copy, just in case." I thanked him. I filed it away. I wasn't ready to fight. Not yet. By February 2025, my body made the decision my mind had been postponing for years. I stopped sleeping. Not the Instagram kind. Not, "Oh, I only got 5 hours." I mean, I would lie in bed staring at the ceiling fan for entire nights, my brain cycling through client deliverables and risk models until my chest felt like someone was standing on it. My doctor, a no-nonsense internist named Dr. Priya Langford, sat me down after my blood work came back showing cortisol levels she described as alarming. She told me to take at least 6 months off. No negotiations. I submitted my resignation on February 28th. My managing partner, Martin Collier, shook my hand and said, "The door's always open when you're ready, Bonnie." I walked out of the office carrying a single box, and for the first time in a decade, I didn't know what to do next. Then I remembered my mother. She used to talk about a little house by the ocean. Nothing fancy, just somewhere with a porch and the sound of waves. She said she'd buy it when she retired. She never retired. I found the listing on a Thursday afternoon. Sullivan's Island, just 20 minutes from Charleston. 6 bedrooms, whitewashed cedar siding, a wraparound porch that faced the Atlantic. 4,200 square feet. Listed at $4.8 million. I called Marcus. I called my mortgage broker. I put down 20%, $960,000, on March 5th and closed on March 21st. I moved in on March 22nd, a Saturday. That first night, I sat on the porch with a glass of wine, listening to waves break against the shore, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt like I belonged somewhere. I didn't tell anyone in my family, but Paige saw an Instagram story from a mutual friend who'd tagged Sullivan's Island and recognized me in the background. She told Victoria, and that night, my phone rang. 11:47 p.m. Victoria's number glowing on my screen. I hadn't answered a call from her in 3 months, but something about that first night in the house, the wine, the waves, the foolish feeling that maybe things could be different, made me pick up. "Paige told me about your little beach house," Victoria said. No hello. No congratulations. Her voice had that clipped, organizing tone she used when rearranging furniture or rearranging people's lives. How nice. "Listen, your father and I need a change of scenery. The city's been exhausting. We're moving in tomorrow. Your dad said it's fine." I was silent for 5 seconds. She filled them. "The master bedroom, obviously. Paige will take the room with the ocean view. You can have the one in the back. It's small, but you're used to small." My free hand gripped the porch railing. Did Dad actually say that? Can I talk to him? He's sleeping. Don't wake him, you know his heart. And honestly, Bonnie, if you don't like it, you can find somewhere else. It's not like you can't afford a motel. My hands were trembling. My jaw was locked. But my voice came out steady, almost gentle. "Sure, Victoria. I'll prepare everything for your arrival." She hung up without saying goodbye. She never said goodbye. I sat in the dark for 20 minutes, staring at the ocean I couldn't see. Then I called my father. It was 12:15 a.m. He picked up on the second ring, wide awake. "Sweetheart," he said, "I didn't say any of that. Victoria told me you invited us down for the weekend." That's when it clicked. The same way it must have clicked for Marcus 8 months earlier, staring at a signature that didn't match. If Victoria could forge my father's words to my face, forging his name on a piece of paper was nothing. I didn't sleep that night, but for the first time in 15 years, I wasn't sad. I was clear. At 7 the next morning, I called Marcus Trent. "The notarized copy of the Mount Pleasant transfer deed," I said. "The one with the signature that looked off. I need to see it. Today." Marcus didn't ask why. He'd known me long enough to recognize the shift. By 9:30 a.m., the documents arrived in my encrypted email. A scanned copy of a transfer deed dated April 12, 2024, conveying my father's family home in Mount Pleasant, valued at $1.2 million, to an entity called Hale Premier Properties, LLC. I'd never heard of it. Neither, I was certain, had my father. I pulled up the South Carolina Secretary of State's business registry. Hale Premier Properties, LLC had been registered in November 2022. Sole member, Victoria R. Hale. No other officers. No other names. Then I did what 12 years of consulting had trained me to do. I compared signatures. I pulled Gerald Beckett's signature from the transfer deed and laid it beside his signatures on his will, his medical power of attorney, and a birthday card he'd sent me in 2023. The differences were immediate. The capital G in Gerald was missing its distinctive loop. The pen pressure was uneven. Heavy at the start, light at the finish. The hallmark of someone drawing a shape rather than writing a name. Marcus confirmed what I already knew. This isn't a sloppy day. This is a simulated forgery. But we need a certified expert to make it hold. He recommended Patricia Sloan, a forensic document examiner accredited by the American Board of Forensic Document Examiners. She'd testified in over 40 federal cases. If she said the signature was forged, no court in South Carolina would argue. There's something else, Marcus said. I found 3 withdrawals from Gerald's IRA, totaling $380,000, routed to an account at Coastal Heritage Bank under the name V. Hale. We'll need a subpoena for the full statements. I stared at the screen. This wasn't family drama anymore. This was a felony. They arrived at 10 the next morning, 2 black SUVs packed to the roof with luggage, decorative pillows, and what appeared to be an entire set of monogrammed bath towels. Victoria stepped out first, designer sunglasses pushed up into her platinum hair, scanning the property the way a buyer surveys a foreclosure. Not bad, she said, for a starter home. A starter home, 4,200 square feet, $4.8 million. She walked straight to the master bedroom as if she'd already memorized the floor plan. Within an hour, my clothes were in a pile on the hallway floor, and her garment bags hung in my closet. Paige took the room with the ocean view. I was directed to the smallest room on the first floor. The one originally meant to be a linen storage area. In my own house. My father trailed behind them, carrying a single duffel bag, looking like a man who'd been loaded into the wrong car. He caught my eye in the hallway and mouthed, "I'm sorry." I shook my head slightly. Not yet. That evening, Victoria invited 3 couples from her social circle for dinner, on no notice, with groceries I'd bought. She toured them through every room, her hand sweeping across the open kitchen like a game show host. Gerald always wanted a beach house, she told them, beaming. So I made it happen. Not one person at that table knew I owned the house. Not one person asked. I washed the dishes. I smiled. And at 9:47 p.m., my phone vibrated with an email from Marcus. Patricia Sloan had completed her preliminary examination. Her finding, the signature on the Mount Pleasant deed was, quote, highly likely to be a simulation forgery. I dried the last glass, set it on the shelf, and went to my tiny room. At 11, when the house was quiet, a second email arrived from Marcus. The subject line read, "Call me first thing tomorrow. This is bigger than we thought." I waited until 6:45 a.m., then slipped out the back door and walked down to the beach. The tide was low, the sand still dark with moisture. I called Marcus from the waterline, where the waves would cover my voice. "The IRA withdrawals were just the start," he said. She opened a supplementary credit card under Gerald's name, his social security number, his credit history, her as authorized user. Current balance, $47,000. Charges include a luxury spa retreat in Hilton Head, 2 Chanel handbags, a first-class flight to New York, none of which Gerald has any record of approving. I closed my eyes. The ocean roared in front of me. "And there's a third account," Marcus continued. "A savings account titled V. Hale Trust at the same bank, $215,000. Source, transfers from their joint household account, categorized as household expenses. I did the math standing there with salt water soaking through my sneakers. The Mount Pleasant house, $1.2 million. The IRA, $380,000. The credit card, $47,000. The trust account, $215,000. Total, approximately $1.842 million. Stripped from my father without his knowledge while he recovered from a mild heart attack and trusted his wife to manage the household. That same afternoon, Patricia Sloan filed her official report. Report number PS 202500087. Her conclusion was unambiguous. The signature on the April 12th transfer deed was a simulated forgery, assessed at the highest probability level the discipline recognizes. We're looking at forgery in the first degree and exploitation of a vulnerable adult, Marcus said. Both felonies under South Carolina Code. What do you want to do? If I report it now? Victoria gets arrested. Gerald gets blindsided. The whole city knows by dinner. And if there's another way? Marcus paused. The Low Country Bar Association's annual charity gala is June 14th. Victoria's being honored, Philanthropist of the Year. If any of that stolen money flowed into the foundation, the award is built on fraud. He let the implication hang. You want to end this in a police station, or on the stage she built for herself? I knew the answer before he finished the question. 84 days. That's what I had between March 23rd and June 14th. The night of the gala. I broke the plan into 3 phases. Phase 1, March through April. Compile every piece of evidence into a file that could withstand scrutiny from a judge, a journalist, or a room full of lawyers. Phase 2, May. Protect my father. Transfer oversight of his finances to an independent fiduciary, get his health stabilized, and prepare him for what was coming. Phase 3, the first 2 weeks of June. Coordinate the reveal at the one event Victoria cared about more than anything on earth. Marcus filed the subpoena request with Charleston County Court on March 28th. Estimated turnaround, 30 to 45 days. Patricia Sloan was already working on her full forensic comparison. The pieces were moving. But I needed one more person. Someone whose credibility Victoria couldn't dismiss and whose platform could outlast a single evening. I called Della Fairchild. Della was 52, a senior editor at the Charleston Society Review, the magazine that chronicled every gala, fundraiser, and garden party in Low Country high society. More importantly, she had been my mother's college roommate. They'd stayed close until the end. Della was one of the last people to visit my mother in hospice. When I told her what I'd found, the line went quiet for a long time. Then Della said, "I've had doubts about Victoria for years. She donates big but never lets anyone see the books. Every time I pitched an audit story, my publisher killed it. Too many advertisers in her circle." Della agreed to attend the gala as a credentialed member of the press. If the evidence held, she would publish a full investigative piece in the Charleston Society Review, a publication with 85,000 readers among the Low Country elite. "One condition," she said. "Every document gets verified independently before I write a word." I wouldn't have it any other way. Living with Victoria in the beach house for those weeks was like sharing a cage with someone who didn't know the lock was already broken. April settled in, and so did she. She changed the locks on the master bedroom, my master bedroom, without asking. She hired a decorator to redo the living room in what she called coastal chic: new throw pillows, a driftwood coffee table, a $6,000 linen sectional. The invoice for $12,000 arrived in my mailbox with a sticky note. "Bonnie, take care of this. XOV. I paid it. I needed her comfortable. I needed her careless." Every Friday, she hosted what she called sunset socials, 5 or 6 couples from her Charleston circle, drinking my wine on my porch, listening to Victoria narrate her life as though she'd built it from scratch. I overheard her tell a woman in a cashmere wrap, "Bonnie is going through a phase, quit her little job, living off savings. We're here to keep an eye on her, really." The woman glanced at me with pity. I refilled her glass. My father pulled me aside one evening in the kitchen. "Are you okay, sweetheart? Victoria says you've been stressed. That you're not handling the career change well. I'm fine, Dad. Better than fine. He studied my face but didn't push. Gerald Beckett had spent 63 years trusting the wrong people to tell him the truth about the people he loved. One afternoon, while Victoria was at a spa appointment, I picked up the iPad she'd left on the kitchen counter. Her browser history was still open. The most recent search: how to add name to property deed South Carolina. She wasn't just visiting, she was planning to put her name on my house. That evening, Marcus called. Subpoena's been approved, bank statements in 2 weeks. He hesitated. But Bonnie, there's another account we haven't seen yet. The Coastal Heritage Bank statements arrived in Marcus's office on the first Monday of May, sealed in a courier envelope marked confidential. Court order enclosed. He called me at noon. I sat in my car in the Sullivan's Island public parking lot, the only place I could be certain Victoria wouldn't overhear. The V. Hale account matches what we expected. $380,000 from Gerald's IRA, deposited in 4 installments between January and October 2024. Marcus said. The credit card we already knew about. $47,000. You said there was another one. There is. A savings account titled V. Hale Trust. Balance as of last month, $215,000. All of it transferred from the joint household checking account Gerald shares with Victoria. Each withdrawal listed as household expenses: groceries, maintenance, utilities. Except it all went to this separate account. I stared through the windshield at the marsh grass bending in the wind. Total damage? $1.2 million for the house, $380 from the IRA, $47 on the card, $215 in the trust account. Grand total, approximately $1.842 million. He let that number sit. Marcus, if I tell my father now, he'll confront her. He won't be able to help it. And that could wreck the gala plan. Or worse, his heart. I know. But he needs to hear it before that night. He needs to stand up on that stage knowing the full truth, and he needs to sign an affidavit confirming he never authorized any of it. We settled on June 1st, 13 days before the gala. Early enough for Gerald to prepare. Late enough that Victoria wouldn't have time to build a counter-narrative. That same week, Patricia Sloan sent an addendum to her report. The handwriting in the forged signature on the Mount Pleasant deed was consistent with the handwriting on the fraudulent credit card application. Same person, same pen habits, same crime. June 1st, a Sunday. I woke before dawn and watched the sky turn from charcoal to pale gold through my tiny first-floor window. Victoria wouldn't be up until 9. She never rose early on weekends. I had a narrow window. I found my father on the porch at 5:45 a.m., sitting with a cup of coffee he'd made himself, watching the pelicans glide over the breakers. "Walk with me?" I said. We took the boardwalk down to the beach. The sand was cool under our feet. I waited until we were far enough from the house that even shouting wouldn't reach. Then I opened the folder. I showed him the transfer deed, the forensic report, the bank statements, all 3 accounts. I showed him the LLC registration for Hale Premier Properties, filed in his wife's maiden name. I laid it out the way I'd lay out a client presentation. Facts first, implications second, questions at the end. Gerald read every page. His hands trembled. A vein in his temple pulsed. For 3 full minutes, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the ocean pulling at the shore. "I didn't sign this," he said finally, his voice barely audible above the waves. "I've never heard of this company. I didn't authorize any of these transfers." He pressed his palms against his eyes. When he lowered them, they were red. "I'm sorry, Bonnie. God, I'm so sorry. I should have protected you." "You didn't know, Dad. She made sure you didn't know." Gerald agreed to everything. The affidavit, the gala, the silence, until June 14th. Marcus notarized his sworn statement 2 days later at his downtown office with a certified witness present. As we walked back to the house that morning, my father stopped at the bottom of the boardwalk stairs. He pulled me into a hug, the first in 8 years, and he whispered so quietly I almost missed it, "Your mother would be proud." I didn't know yet that my mother's voice would reach me one more time before this was over, in a way I never could have predicted. 13 days. Victoria spent every one of them preparing for the night she believed would crown her legacy. She hired a personal stylist, $3,500 for a single consultation. She ordered a custom champagne-colored gown from a boutique on King Street, $8,200, fitted twice, hemmed to the millimeter. Every evening after dinner, she stood in front of the master bedroom mirror and rehearsed her acceptance speech, gesturing to an invisible audience with the practiced grace of someone who'd been performing generosity her entire life. On June 8th, she told me I was expected at the gala. "For appearances," she said, "you'll sit in the back, obviously, but I need the family there. It looks better for the photos." She paused, then added, "Wear something simple. This isn't your night." "Of course, Victoria. I wouldn't dream of stealing your spotlight." Behind the scenes, every gear was turning. Marcus finalized the evidence file, Gerald's affidavit, Patricia Sloane's forensic report, the complete bank statements, the Hale Premier Properties LLC registration, and a printout of Victoria's browser search history recovered from the household iPad. All originals, all verified, sealed in a manila envelope. On June 10th, Marcus met with Judge Raymond Holt, the president of the Low Country Bar Association, who was personally overseeing the gala. Marcus presented the file. Judge Holt reviewed it for 45 minutes in his chambers, asked 3 clarifying questions, and then removed his reading glasses. "This is deeply serious," he said, "under Section 7.3 of our association bylaws. Any substantiated allegation of financial misconduct must be addressed before an honorific is conferred. I'll make the arrangements." Victoria didn't know. She was too busy choosing between diamond studs and chandelier earrings. On June 12th, she saw me talking on the phone in the garden and stopped. "Who was that?" "Spa," I said, "booking a blowout for the gala." She looked me over. "Don't go overboard. That night is mine." Then, on the evening of June 13th, one day before the gala, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. "I know Victoria isn't who you think she is. Meet me at Waterfront Park, 3 p.m. tomorrow." HBHB. I stared at those 2 letters until the screen went dark. I almost didn't go. The gala was hours away, and the last thing I needed was a distraction from a stranger with cryptic initials. But something about the certainty in that message. "I know Victoria isn't who you think she is," told me this person had been waiting a long time to say it. Waterfront Park, 3 p.m., June 13th. The sun was brutal, the kind of Charleston afternoon that makes the air shimmer above the pavement. I sat on a bench near the pineapple fountain and watched a woman approach. Tall, silver-haired, somewhere in her early 60s, wearing a pressed linen blazer despite the heat. She walked like someone who had rehearsed being calm. "Bonnie Beckett?" She extended her hand. "My name is Helen Briggs." HB Helen sat beside me and told me a story I'd never heard, one Victoria had buried so deep that even Google couldn't find it easily. Before Gerald, before Charleston, before the Hale Beckett Foundation and the philanthropist persona, Victoria had been married to a man named Richard Briggs, a successful dentist in Savannah. They wed in 2005. By 2009, it was over. After Richard discovered that Victoria had quietly transferred $190,000 from their joint accounts into a personal savings account she'd opened under her maiden name. "He didn't press charges," Helen said. "He wanted a clean divorce, wanted to forget. I respected that for 16 years. But I saw your name in a blog post by Della Fairchild, something about women in Charleston consulting, and I recognized you, Gerald Beckett's daughter." She looked at me steadily. "Victoria has a pattern, Bonnie. She finds men who are successful but trusting, takes control of the finances, and bleeds them dry. Your father is not her first victim." Helen handed me a manila folder, a certified copy of the divorce decree, Briggs v. Hale, 2009, with the phrase "dissipation of marital assets" highlighted in yellow. 2 husbands, 2 sets of stolen funds, the same playbook, 16 years apart. "I stayed quiet because I was ashamed," Helen said. "If I can help your father, I will." I thanked her. And I called Marcus before I even reached my car. The night of June 13th settled over the beach house like a held breath. Victoria was in the master bedroom, rehearsing her speech one last time. Through the door, I could hear the cadence of her voice rising and falling, grateful, humble, rehearsed to perfection. In the next room, Paige was arranging jewelry on the dresser, holding up earrings to her reflection, completely unaware that by tomorrow night, every piece of the life her mother had constructed would be scattered across a ballroom floor. My father knocked on my door at 10 o'clock. His face was drawn, but his eyes were steady. The eyes of a man who had finally stopped looking away. He held a small wooden box, walnut, with a tarnished brass clasp. "I found this," he said quietly, in the locked drawer of Victoria's nightstand. "She was at the spa this afternoon. I wasn't looking for it. I was looking for my reading glasses." He opened the box. Inside were 2 handwritten pages, folded once, the paper yellowed at the edges. My mother's handwriting. I knew it instantly. The looping lowercase y. The way she crossed her T's with a slight upward slant, as if every word was reaching for something better. The letter was dated 3 days before she died. "Bonnie, my brave girl. You don't need anyone's permission to live your life. You are enough. You have always been enough. Don't ever let anyone make you doubt that." Victoria had kept this letter hidden for 17 years. My mother's last words to me, sealed in a box, locked in a drawer, in the bedroom of the woman who had spent a decade and a half telling me I was nothing. My father and I sat together in my small room and cried without speaking. When I could breathe again, I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my purse, the one I'd carry tomorrow. "I won't let her down, Dad." Before I turned off the light, I passed the hallway that led to the porch. Victoria's silhouette was framed against the moonlit ocean, phone pressed to her ear. I stopped. Her voice drifted through the screen door. "Don't worry. After the gala, I'll have them transfer the deed. She won't even notice until it's done." She was talking about my house. The house I'd bought with 12 years of invisible labor, and she was planning to take it the moment her trophy was in hand. I went to bed. I set my alarm for 6 a.m., and for the first time in 84 days, I slept soundly. June 14th, 2025. The morning arrived bright and still, the kind of low-humidity Charleston day that makes everything look sharper than it has any right to be. At 8 a.m., I was in Marcus Trent's office, a glass-walled suite on the 3rd floor of a converted warehouse on East Bay Street. The manila envelope sat between us on his desk like a loaded weapon laid flat. We reviewed the contents one final time, the forged transfer deed with Patricia Sloane's forensic report, number PS202500087, the Coastal Heritage Bank statements for all 3 accounts, Gerald's notarized affidavit, signed and witnessed on June 3rd, the Hale Premier Properties LLC registration, the divorce decree from Briggs vs. Hale, 2009, and a screenshot of Victoria's browser history. The search for how to add a name to a property deed in South Carolina. Time-stamped, device identified, saved to PDF. "Helen Briggs confirmed this morning," Marcus said. "She purchased a ticket through Della, table 12. She's ready." At 10 o'clock, Marcus met Judge Holt at the courthouse for a final briefing. The judge had already informed the gala's organizing committee. The Philanthropist of the Year award would be paused before presentation, pending a matter related to the nominee that requires the association's attention. The committee agreed, reluctantly, but unanimously. No one in Charleston's legal elite wanted their signature award tainted by unexamined fraud. Victoria, meanwhile, spent the morning in a state of radiant oblivion. She emerged from the master bedroom at 2 o'clock in her champagne gown, hair swept into a high chignon, diamond pendant catching the light. She surveyed me in my simple black dress and pearl earrings the way a queen surveys a chambermaid. "At least try to look like you belong there, Bonnie." I met her gaze. "Don't worry, Victoria. Tonight, everyone will know exactly where I belong." She frowned, a brief crease between perfectly filled brows, but she was already checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. She had bigger things on her mind. Or so she thought. The grand ballroom of the Belmont Charleston Place was the kind of room designed to make ordinary people feel extraordinary, and extraordinary people feel immortal. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars, floor-to-ceiling windows draped in ivory silk. Round tables set with bone china and sterling flatware, each one anchored by a centerpiece of white peonies and flickering votives. 220 guests, attorneys, circuit court judges, state legislators, founders of nonprofits, real estate developers, and the social columnists who chronicled their every handshake. Black tie, impeccable manners. In a room like this, reputation wasn't just currency, it was oxygen. Victoria moved through the crowd as though the evening had been choreographed around her. She kissed cheeks. She clasped hands. She leaned in close to whisper things that made powerful people laugh. At one point, I watched her rest her palm on Judge Holt's forearm and say, with the kind of sincerity that only a lifetime of practice can produce, "I'm so humbled by this honor, Raymond. Truly." She sat at table 1, the VIP position, directly before the stage. Gerald was beside her, his posture rigid, his water glass untouched. He hadn't looked at Victoria since they'd arrived. She hadn't noticed. I was at table 18, near the service entrance, the table Victoria had assigned me. Marcus sat to my left, his briefcase tucked beneath his chair. At table 12, I could see Helen Briggs, silver hair, linen blazer, watching the room with the patience of someone who'd waited 16 years for this evening. In the press section, Della Fairchild adjusted her recorder and opened a fresh page in her notebook. At 8:30, the MC tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we move to the evening's awards presentation, the association has a brief announcement." Victoria straightened in her chair. She smoothed her gown. She smiled, the generous, camera-ready smile she'd been rehearsing in mirrors for weeks. Then Judge Raymond Holt rose from his seat, walked to the podium, and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I regret to inform you that we have received information requiring our attention before we proceed this evening." 220 pairs of eyes turned to the stage. Victoria's smile didn't falter. Not yet. But I saw her fingers tighten around her napkin. Judge Holt's voice carried through the ballroom with the measured gravity of a man who had spent 30 years on the bench. Under Section 7.3 of the Low Country Bar Association's bylaws, any substantiated allegation of financial misconduct involving a nominee must be addressed before an award of honor is conferred. This evening, we have received a formally documented complaint, supported by forensic evidence, sworn testimony, and independently verified financial records. He paused. The complaint was filed by a member of the nominee's own family. A murmur rippled through the tables, the quiet, involuntary sound of 220 people recalibrating their expectations simultaneously. Victoria was on her feet before Judge Holt finished. "This is absurd," she said, her voice pitched perfectly between outrage and bewilderment, the voice of a woman who'd spent decades controlling rooms. "Raymond, who filed this? This is a charity event, not a courtroom." Judge Holt looked directly at me. "Ms. Bonnie Beckett, you've been invited to present your evidence." The murmur became a wave. Heads turned. Victoria's eyes found me at table 18, the back of the room, exactly where she'd put me. And for one long, suspended second, we looked at each other across 17 tables, 220 witnesses, and 15 years of silence. I stood. I picked up the manila envelope. And I walked. 17 tables. Each step deliberate, each step audible on the polished hardwood. I could feel the weight of every gaze in the room, could hear the rustle of evening gowns as women turned in their chairs, the clink of a water glass. Someone sat down too hard. "Gerald." Victoria's voice cracked the silence like a struck match. "Do something. She's trying to ruin me." My father sat still. His hands were folded on the table. He did not look at his wife. I stepped onto the stage. 220 faces stared up at me. The chandelier light was warm and merciless. I set the envelope on the podium, leaned into the microphone, and took one long breath. "I didn't come here to destroy anyone," I said. "I came here because the truth couldn't wait one more day." I opened the envelope and removed the first document. On April 12, 2024, a transfer deed was filed in Charleston County conveying ownership of the Beckett family home in Mount Pleasant, assessed value $1.2 million, to a limited liability company called Hale Premier Properties. I held the deed up. The projection screen behind me lit up with a high-resolution scan, the county seal, the legal description, and at the bottom, a signature reading Gerald A. Beckett. This signature is not my father's. I advanced to the next slide, a side-by-side comparison. On the left, the deed signature. On the right, Gerald's authentic signature from his will, his medical power of attorney, and a notarized affidavit signed on June 3rd of this year. The differences were visible from the back of the room: the missing loop on the capital G, the inconsistent pen pressure, the mechanical quality of a hand that was copying rather than writing. This analysis was conducted by Patricia Sloan, a forensic document examiner accredited by the American Board of Forensic Document Examiners with testimony in over 40 federal proceedings. Her conclusion, stated in Report PS2-02-50087, the signature is a simulated forgery at the highest probability level recognized in the field. The ballroom was silent, not the polite silence of a formal event. The airless silence of a room that has collectively stopped breathing. My father rose from table 1. His voice was hoarse but clear. I did not sign that document. I did not know that company existed, and I did not authorize the transfer of my home. Victoria gripped the edge of the table. Gerald, tell them you signed it. Tell them. He looked at her for the first time that evening. Then he slowly shook his head. Somewhere at table 5, a man set his fork down on his plate. The tiny clink rang out like a gavel. I pulled the second set of documents from the envelope. Between January and October 2024, 4 withdrawals totaling $380,000 were made from Gerald Beckett's individual retirement account and deposited into a savings account at Coastal Heritage Bank. The next slide appeared: redacted bank statements with the routing numbers, dates, and amounts highlighted. The account is registered under the name V. Hale. I heard a chair scrape. Someone at table 9 whispered something to the person beside them. Additionally, a supplementary credit card was opened using Gerald Beckett's Social Security number, without his knowledge or consent. Current balance: $47,000. Charges include luxury travel, designer purchases, and personal spa treatments, none of which appear in Gerald's personal records. The third slide, a separate savings account titled V. Hale Trust, holds $215,000 transferred from the Beckett's joint household checking account, disguised as routine household expenses. I set the statements on the podium. The total amount diverted from my father's assets without his knowledge or authorization is approximately $1.842 million. Under South Carolina Code Section 433510, the financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, my father is 63 years old with a documented cardiac history, is a felony. Victoria turned to the room. The tears came immediately, glistening, perfectly timed, rolling down cheeks that hadn't creased with genuine emotion in years. She's lying. Her voice broke with practiced fragility. Gerald gave me access to everything. This is a family misunderstanding, not a criminal matter. How dare you turn a charity dinner into a public trial? Judge Holt spoke from his seat, his voice level as a plumb line. Ms. Hale Beckett, the evidence has been independently verified. The association is revoking the Philanthropist of the Year award, effective immediately. Victoria's mouth opened. No sound came out. Then, from table 12, a woman stood up. Helen Briggs rose with the quiet composure of a woman who had spent 16 years rehearsing this moment in her mind. "My name is Helen Briggs," she said, her voice carrying across the ballroom with the clarity of someone who has finally decided to stop whispering. "Victoria Hale was previously married to my ex-husband, Richard Briggs, a dentist in Savannah. They married in 2005. The marriage ended in 2009. After Richard discovered that Victoria had transferred $190,000 from their joint accounts into a personal account under her maiden name." She held up a bound document. "This is a certified copy of the divorce decree, Briggs v. Hale, Chatham County Superior Court, 2009. The ruling specifically cites dissipation of marital assets. She passed the decree to Judge Holt, who accepted it without a word. The murmur that had been building in the room broke like a wave. 220 people began talking at once, at first in whispers, then in full voices. I saw a woman at table 7 cover her mouth. 2 attorneys at table 3 leaned toward each other with expressions I recognized from every boardroom I'd ever worked in. The look of professionals who have just realized they were standing next to a bomb. Victoria stood frozen between the VIP table and the aisle, her champagne gown catching the chandelier light. Paige sat beside the empty chair, tears streaming down her face, her hands clenched in her lap. She didn't look at her mother. She looked at the tablecloth. My father stepped away from the VIP table and walked toward me. He climbed the 2 short stairs to the stage and stood beside me at the podium. He didn't take the microphone. He didn't need to. Gerald Beckett, standing next to his daughter, facing the room, said everything that words could not. Victoria looked at us. Then at the 220 faces that had, until 10 minutes ago, admired her. Not one of them met her gaze. She picked up her clutch. She walked to the exit. The sound of her champagne heels striking the marble floor echoed through the ballroom long after the door closed behind her. No one followed. For a few seconds after the door closed, the ballroom held its breath. Then Judge Holt returned to the podium. The Philanthropist of the Year Award for 2025 will not be conferred this evening, he said. The Low Country Bar Association will initiate a full audit of all donations received through the Hale Beckett Foundation. We ask for your patience and discretion as this matter proceeds through the appropriate legal channels. He stepped back from the microphone. The room exhaled. What happened next I did not expect. A man at table 3, tall, silver-templed, with the bearing of someone who owned the building he worked in, stood and crossed the ballroom toward me. Douglas Wren, founding partner of Wren and Partners, one of the most respected litigation firms in the Carolinas. He shook my hand. You presented that more clearly than half the attorneys I've hired in 20 years. If your father needs legal representation for the divorce or the criminal referral, here's my card. He pressed it into my palm. Pro bono. Behind him, Della Fairchild caught my eye from the press section. She nodded once. The kind of nod that means I have everything I need. I returned to the microphone one final time. The room quieted again. I didn't come here tonight to tear someone down, I said. I came because my father deserved to know the truth. Because silence isn't loyalty. It's surrender. And because no one in this room or anywhere else should have to trade their dignity for the appearance of family harmony. The applause began at table 12, Helen, steady and certain. It rippled outward through the room, not thunderous, not jubilant, but deliberate. The sound of 220 people offering something rarer than praise. Respect. My father took my arm as we descended the stage steps. His grip was firm. His eyes were clear. And for the first time in 15 years, we walked out of a room together. The drive back to Sullivan's Island took 23 minutes. My father sat in the passenger seat and didn't speak for the first 20. Then, somewhere on the bridge over the Intracoastal Waterway, with the marsh stretching out black and endless on either side, he said, "I'll file for divorce Monday." I didn't argue. I didn't comfort. I just reached over and squeezed his hand. When we pulled into the driveway, the house was dark. Victoria's things were still there. The garment bags, the monogrammed towels, the decorative pillows she'd chosen for my living room. But she was not. She'd apparently taken an Uber from the hotel. Where she went, I didn't know. I didn't look. Gerald's phone buzzed 14 times between 11 p.m. and 2 in the morning. I know because I could hear it vibrating through the guest room wall. He showed me the messages the next morning. "Gerald, please, I can explain. Don't do this to our family. Then, you're making a mistake. Then, this is all Bonnie's fault. She manipulated you. And the last one, at 1:47 a.m.? You'll regret this." Paige called me at 11:30 that night. She was crying. The ugly, raw kind of crying that strips away every performance. "Why did you do this? She's my mother." "I know she is. I said. And I'm sorry you're in pain. But she stole nearly $2 million from my father, Paige. She forged his name. She was planning to take my house next. I didn't have another option. The line went quiet. Then, very softly, I know. After we hung up, I sat on the porch in the dark. The ocean was louder at night. Or maybe I was just finally quiet enough to hear it. I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow. The way you feel when someone removes something that's been growing inside you for years. It hurts. But you're lighter. Gerald came out and sat in the chair beside me. He placed my mother's letter on the armrest between us. "Keep it," he said. "It was always yours?" Victoria's final message, "You'll regret this," wasn't an empty threat. It was a press release. By 9 a.m. on June 15th, the Low Country Daily Buzz, a local tabloid site with about 40,000 followers, ran a headline that made my stomach clench. Local philanthropist claims stepdaughter orchestrated public humiliation at charity gala. The article was built almost entirely on Victoria's interview. Tears, trembling voice, the full performance. She called me troubled. She called the gala reveal a vindictive ambush by a jealous stepdaughter who never accepted me. She said Gerald was confused and manipulated. The comments section split immediately. A disturbing number of people believed her. That poor woman was blindsided. No family business should be aired in public. Bonnie Beckett should be ashamed. I sat at the kitchen counter reading those words and felt a familiar ache. The people-pleasing instinct reaching up from somewhere deep, whispering that maybe I'd gone too far. Maybe I should have handled it privately. Maybe I should apologize. I called Marcus. He didn't let me finish the sentence. "Don't respond, don't post, don't call anyone. Della's piece goes live tonight. The facts will do the work." 2 hate emails arrived that afternoon, from women in Victoria's social circle, both of whom had been dinner guests at my own table in my own house, drinking my wine. One wrote, "You should be ashamed of yourself. Victoria has given more to this community than you ever will." The other simply wrote, "Karma is real, Bonnie." I thought about that word. Karma. I thought about Victoria forging my father's name, draining his retirement, hiding my mother's last letter in a locked drawer for 17 years, and still managing to make half the internet feel sorry for her. I wondered, have you ever been in a situation where you knew you did the right thing, but the world made you feel like a villain for it? If you have, tell me in the comments. Because that afternoon, I needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy. Then, at 6 o'clock, my phone lit up with a push notification from the Charleston Society Review. Breaking full evidence of financial fraud by Victoria Hale Beckett. Sources confirmed. Della kept her word. Della Fairchild's article was 3,200 words of surgical journalism. No speculation, no adjectives, just evidence stacked like bricks. She published the forged deed alongside Patricia Sloan's forensic analysis. She printed the bank statements with the routing numbers redacted, but the amounts and account names intact. She quoted Judge Holt on the record. The evidence presented was sufficient to warrant immediate revocation of the award and referral to appropriate authorities. She included a full timeline of Victoria's financial activity, the LLC registration in 2022, the IRA withdrawals through 2024, the credit card opened without Gerald's knowledge. And she laid the Briggs divorce decree beside it like a mirror. The headline alone was enough. The philanthropist who stole. Inside Victoria Hale Beckett's double life. Within 12 hours, the article hit 127,000 views, 4,800 shares, 1,200 comments. The top-rated one, from a reader in Somerville, read, "This woman had a pattern. Gerald Beckett is lucky his daughter saved him." The Low Country Daily Buzz, the same outlet that had run Victoria's teary interview that morning, published a retraction by midnight. "We apologize for our earlier one-sided reporting and encourage readers to review the full evidence published by the Charleston Society Review." The Low Country Bar Association released a formal statement the following morning. The 2025 Philanthropist of the Year Award has been permanently rescinded. The Hale Beckett Foundation's partnership status has been suspended pending a comprehensive financial audit. Within 48 hours, 3 of the foundation's largest corporate sponsors, a regional bank, a luxury car dealership, and a hospitality group, withdrew their pledges. Combined value, $420,000. Victoria's publicist released a 2-sentence statement on her behalf. Mrs. Hale Beckett categorically denies all allegations and looks forward to clearing her name through the legal process. No one quoted it. The news cycle had already moved on, but not in the direction Victoria wanted. On Monday, June 16th, my father walked into the Charleston County Family Court at 9:15 a.m., wearing a navy suit and the expression of a man who had just woken up after a very long sleep. He filed for divorce. Grounds: fraud upon the marriage and dissipation of marital assets. The petition was 14 pages long, prepared by Marcus Trent over the preceding 2 weeks, and it cited every document, every account, and every forged signature we'd uncovered. That same afternoon, Marcus drove to the Charleston County Sheriff's Office and filed a formal criminal complaint. The charges he recommended were precise: forgery in the first degree under South Carolina Code Section 1613-10. Exploitation of a vulnerable adult under Section 4335-10. Identity fraud for the unauthorized credit card. Each one a felony. Each one carrying potential prison time measured in years, not months. The sheriff's office opened an investigation immediately. Victoria was instructed to present herself within 72 hours. By Wednesday, she had hired Nathan Pratt, a well-known Charleston criminal defense attorney. Pratt's first move was a phone call to Marcus, proposing a settlement. Return the money, close the accounts, drop the charges, and everyone walks away quietly. Marcus relayed the offer. I didn't need 30 seconds. No settlement, I said. My father is entitled to the full protection of the law, not a handshake in a conference room. By the end of that week, Coastal Heritage Bank had frozen both the V. Hale Savings Account and the V. Hale Trust, a combined $595,000, locked until the investigation concluded. Paige called me that Thursday, her second call since the gala. Her voice was calmer this time, quieter. Can we talk? She asked. Not as enemies. I never thought of you as my enemy, Paige, I said. But you need to decide where you stand. I can't do that for you. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I know. The final number arrived on July 2nd. The Low Country Bar Association's emergency audit of the Hale Beckett Foundation uncovered what Marcus had suspected from the beginning. The rot went deeper than the personal accounts. $85,000 in charitable donations had been reclassified through a series of internal transfers and quietly redirected toward Victoria's personal expenses. Event planning invoices that turned out to be catering for her private dinner parties, administrative costs that matched the exact amount of her monthly spa membership, and a $10,000 consulting fee paid to Hale Premier Properties, LLC, the same shell company used to steal my father's house. The revised total, $1.927 million. On that same day, the Charleston County Grand Jury returned a formal indictment, 4 felony counts: forgery in the first degree, exploitation of a vulnerable adult, identity fraud, misappropriation of charitable funds. Victoria surrendered herself at the county courthouse, posted $75,000 bail, and was released with a GPS ankle monitor and a court order prohibiting contact with Gerald Beckett. The restraining order was granted the same afternoon, 200 feet, no exceptions. Della Fairchild published a follow-up. The Post and Courier, South Carolina's largest daily newspaper, picked up the story. So did the Charleston City paper. Conservative estimates place the combined readership at over 500,000. On social media, the hashtag Hale Beckett fraud trended regionally for 3 days. Victoria's name, once synonymous with charity luncheons and society page features, now returned only one kind of search result. Her defense attorney, Nathan Pratt, floated the idea of a countersuit. Defamation against me. Marcus's response was a single sentence in an email. Every statement made at the gala was supported by independently verified evidence reviewed in advance by a sitting judge. We welcome the discovery process. The countersuit was never filed, In the first week of July, after the indictment and the restraining order and the newspaper headlines had all settled into a kind of exhausted stillness, I sat down with my father on the porch of the beach house. The same porch, the same chairs. But nothing else was the same. "Dad," I said, "I love you. I need you to hear that first, because what I'm about to say might not sound like love, but it is." He nodded. He was listening, really listening, maybe for the first time in years. I'm not going back to being the version of me that made everyone comfortable. I spent 15 years being the quiet one, the accommodating one, the daughter who never complained because she didn't want to make trouble. That's over. If we're going to have a relationship, a real one, it has to be built on honesty. You tell me the truth. I tell you the truth. And neither of us lets anyone else rewrite the story. His eyes glistened, but he didn't look away. "I'm going to start seeing someone," he said. "A therapist. I need to understand how I let this happen. How I let someone stand between me and my own daughter for 15 years without seeing it. That's all I'm asking." That evening, I wrote an email to Paige. I kept it short and clear. "I don't hate you. I never did. But I need you to understand that what your mother did was criminal. Not a misunderstanding, not a family squabble. If you want to build something real between us, it starts with acknowledging that. I'm not asking you to choose sides. I'm asking you to choose honesty." I also made a phone call I'd been postponing. To Dr. Elaine Marsh, a licensed clinical social worker specializing in family trauma. My first appointment was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Setting boundaries, it turns out, isn't a single dramatic moment on a stage. It's a series of quiet decisions made in ordinary rooms, and the hardest boundary to enforce is the one you set with yourself. The letter arrived in mid-July. Not an email, not a text, but 3 handwritten pages in a cream-colored envelope with no return address. I recognized Paige's handwriting immediately. She still dotted her I's with tiny circles, the way she had when she was 14 and I was 21, and we'd briefly, before Victoria made it clear that closeness between us was unacceptable, been something like friends. She wrote, "Bonnie, I've been crying for 3 weeks. Not because my mother was arrested, because I finally realized what I've known for 15 years and refused to say out loud. I watched her treat you like you didn't exist. I watched her take your bedroom, your holidays, your place in family photos. I watched her call you the leftover at a dinner party, and I laughed along because it was easier than defending you. I was comfortable, and comfort made me complicit. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I haven't earned that. I'm writing because you deserve to hear someone in this family say, 'I saw it. It was wrong. And I did nothing. I've started seeing a therapist. I want to be someone who tells the truth, even when it costs me something. If you're willing, I'd like to try to know you. Not as stepsisters who tolerate each other, but as 2 adults who choose honesty over convenience.'" I read the letter twice. The second time, I cried. She had also included something I hadn't expected, a confession. Victoria had told Paige years ago that I'd received a large inheritance from my mother and refused to share it with the family. "That's why she doesn't come to holidays," Victoria had said. "She thinks she's better than us." It was, of course, completely fabricated. My mother left no money. She left a letter, and even that had been stolen. I wrote back, "I appreciate your courage, Paige. Let's start slow." We met at a coffee shop on King Street at the end of July. We talked for 3 hours. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't polished. But it was the most honest conversation I'd ever had with anyone who shared my last name. December 2025, 6 months later. I'm sitting on the porch of the Sullivan's Island house, the same spot where this whole story began, with a glass of wine and a phone call at 11:47 p.m. The waves sound the same. The salt air tastes the same, but I am not the same woman who sat here in March. My father lives in the guest cottage now, 50 steps from the main house. He finalized his divorce in October. The settlement restored every stolen dollar to his accounts, or at least the dollars that could be recovered. He sees his therapist every Thursday. His cardiologist says his numbers are better than they've been in 3 years. Last Tuesday, he made dinner for the two of us. The first time he'd cooked since my mother was alive. It was terrible. I ate every bite. I went back to work, but not to Meridian. I founded Beckett Advisory Group, a solo strategic consulting practice based out of a small office on East Bay Street. My first 3 clients included Douglas Wren's firm, the man who shook my hand at the gala and offered his card. Revenue in the first quarter exceeded my projections by 14%. Victoria's trial is scheduled for March 2026. 4 felony counts. If convicted, she faces 5 to 15 years. I don't think about it as much as I used to. Paige visits the island once a month. We're not close, not yet. But we're honest. And that's worth more. Della Fairchild's follow-up article, Bonnie Beckett, the woman who chose truth over silence, was republished by Forbes Women in their Fall Voices column. I didn't read it for 2 weeks. When I finally did, I read it beside my mother's letter. The last line my mother ever wrote to me was this: "You are enough, always." Every morning I open that letter. Every morning I sit on this porch and watch the Atlantic stretch out toward the horizon. And every morning I know something I didn't know a year ago. I'm here because I chose to be. Not because someone permitted it. Not because I earned the right by silence. Because I am enough. I always was. If you stayed until the end of this story, thank you. Truly. This wasn't about revenge. It was about the moment you stop shrinking so that someone else can feel tall. If you're in a relationship where you've been making yourself smaller, in your family, at work, anywhere, I hope you heard something tonight that reminded you, your boundaries are not selfish. They are survival. Hit subscribe if you want more stories like this one, and check the description. There's another story there that I think you'll see yourself in. I'll see you in the next one. I'm Whitney, 29 years old, and last April my mother tried to sell my wedding day to my cousin, without bothering to ask me first. Picture this: 47 missed calls lighting up a phone screen at 3 in the morning, a 14-page spreadsheet totaling $83,247, and me, standing barefoot on a beach in the Maldives in a white chiffon dress, salt air in my hair, my husband's hand in mine, while 200 guests back in Portland, Oregon, stared at an empty ballroom and wondered where the bride had gone. That all happened between March and June of last year, and I promise you, every dollar and every detail matters. Before I walk you through it, if this story hits home for you, take a second to hit like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely want to. And while you're at it, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I'd love to know. Now, let me take you back to March, the day I first realized my family had never actually seen me. My name is Whitney Collier, and for 7 years I was the most reliable piece of financial infrastructure my family ever owned. I need to give you the picture. My mother, Diane Collier, 56, worked as an administrative manager at a public high school in Portland. Solid job, about $54,000 a year. Her older sister, my Aunt Lorraine Holloway, 61, had always been the matriarch of the extended family. Whatever Lorraine decided, Diane followed. And whatever Diane needed, she came to me. It started small. In 2017, the year I landed my first real position as a financial analyst at Hargrove and Ellis Consulting, Mom called about a leaky roof, $400. Then it was $600 for an insurance gap, then $8,500 for a down payment on my cousin Megan's car. She needs it for work, Whitney, you know how it is. Then $12,000 to remodel Mom's basement, then $7,200 for my younger brother Tyler's certification program. He was 20 at the time, and Mom swore the community college wouldn't hold his spot without a deposit by Friday. Every single time I hesitated, the playbook ran like clockwork. Phase 1. Tears. You're the oldest, I have no one else to lean on. Phase 2. The cold shoulder. Radio silence for days, sometimes a full week. Phase 3. The conference call. Lorraine would dial in with that low, disappointed voice. "Whitney, sweetheart, your mother is heartbroken. Is money really more important than family?" 3 phases, 100% success rate, 7 years running. Somewhere around January 2019, I started logging every transfer, every Venmo, every check in a private Excel spreadsheet. Habit of the job, I told myself. I'm an analyst. I track numbers. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even a plan. It was the only place where the truth existed exactly as it happened, down to the penny. I had no idea that spreadsheet would eventually blow my family apart. If I was the family's silent ATM, my cousin Megan Holloway was its golden trophy. Megan was 28, a year younger than me, Aunt Lorraine's only daughter. She worked freelance marketing gigs. Income unpredictable, maybe $35,000 a year on a good year. But you'd never guess that from her Instagram. 12,000 followers, curated brunches, boutique hotel lobbies, outfit of the day posts with captions like, "Living my best life." She looked like a woman pulling in six figures, and our family treated her like one. At every holiday dinner, every birthday gathering, Megan was the sun. Mom would nudge me under the table. "See how Megan works a room? You should try that sometime." Aunt Lorraine once said, in front of 8 relatives, "Megan has real style. Not everyone does, and that's fine." She looked directly at me when she said, "Not everyone." Here's the moment that branded itself into my memory. Thanksgiving 2023. I paid for the entire event, venue rental, catering, decorations, $3,200. When Aunt Lorraine stood to give thanks, she smiled at my mother and said, "Diane, thank you for putting this beautiful evening together." Not a glance my way, not a syllable of my name. I sat there holding my fork and smiled because that was what I'd been trained to do, Nathan noticed. We'd been dating about a year by then, and on the drive home he turned the radio down and said quietly, "Did you catch that? Nobody said thank you to you." I had caught it. I'd been catching it for years. I just hadn't admitted what it meant. There's one more thing about Megan you need to know, and I wouldn't learn this detail until later that winter. She was carrying $31,000 in credit card debt. Keep that number in your pocket. It'll explain everything that comes next. In October 2024, Nathan Brennan asked me to marry him. He did it at Pittock Mansion, that gorgeous overlook above Portland where you can see the city, the river, Mount Hood if the sky's clear. He'd packed a thermos of my favorite Earl Grey, and when he knelt on the damp stone, he didn't give a speech. He just said, "Whitney, you're the first person who doesn't need a reason to be loved. Will you let me prove that every day?" I said yes before he finished the sentence. Nathan was 31, a software engineer at a fintech company downtown, pulling in about $118,000 a year. Steady, practical, protective without being pushy. He was the first person from outside the Collier orbit, and because of that, he could see the pattern I'd been too deep inside to recognize. We chose Ridgewood Estate, an elegant venue just outside Portland, capacity 200, ivy-covered stone walls, exactly the kind of place I'd scrolled past for years thinking, that's for other people. The full package came to $28,000. We signed the contract in November 2024, put down a 50% deposit of $14,000, and the coordinator, Jill Pemberton, meticulous, mid-40s, the kind of woman who triple-checks seating charts, walked us through every clause. I remember her tapping Section 7.2 with her pen. If you cancel at least 8 weeks before the event date, we refund 80% of the deposit. I nodded politely. Why would I ever need that? This venue was the first significant amount of money I had ever spent on myself without asking anyone's permission. When I told Mom, she said, "Oh, congrats." Aunt Lorraine's first question was, "How many people does it hold?" Megan commented on my Instagram announcement. One word, "Cute." One word, after everything I'd paid for. One word. March 12th changed everything. Nathan and I had set up a shared email for wedding planning, one inbox for vendor quotes, RSVPs, fabric swatches, all of it. That Wednesday evening, Nathan was scrolling through confirmations from the florist when he stopped mid-scroll and said, "Whitney, come look at this." It was a forwarded message from Jill Pemberton. Her tone was polite but careful. "Hi, Whitney. I received an email from someone claiming to represent your family, requesting a second reception be added to your date. I wanted to confirm with you before making any changes. Please see the forwarded message below." Below Jill's note was the original email, from my mother. Dear Jill, I'm Diane Collier, Whitney's mother and family representative. We'd like to add a second celebration for my niece Megan Holloway on the same date, sharing the ballroom and splitting costs. Whitney has agreed to this arrangement. Please send us a revised quote. Thank you. I read it 3 times. My vision tunneled. Whitney has agreed to this arrangement. I had agreed to nothing. Nobody had called me, texted me, or even hinted at this. My hands were shaking when I dialed Mom. She picked up on the second ring, breezy, like nothing in the world was wrong. Oh, sweetie, I was going to tell you. Aunt Lorraine mentioned Megan just got engaged too, and the venue is so gorgeous, so we thought, why not share? You split $28,000, you only pay $14,000. It's a win for everyone. Don't be selfish about it. Don't be selfish. The woman who had taken $83,000 from me over 7 years was telling me not to be selfish about my own wedding. I managed 4 words before I hung up. I never agreed, Mom. She called back twice. I didn't answer. That night I sat alone at the kitchen table, laptop open, the apartment dark except for the blue glow of the screen. Nathan had gone to bed after squeezing my shoulder and saying, "Take the time you need." I opened the spreadsheet. I'd been updating it for 6 years. Columns for date, amount, purpose, who asked, how they asked, and a notes field where I sometimes pasted screenshots of the text messages that preceded each transfer. It had started as basic bookkeeping. Now, scrolling from the first entry in January 2017 to the last one in February 2025, it read like something else entirely. I began tallying, not the way I usually did, skimming for monthly totals. This time I pulled every line into a summary sheet and let the formula run. Basement remodel for Mom, $12,000. Megan's car deposit, $8,500. Tyler's certification tuition, $7,200. Thanksgiving and Christmas gatherings, 7 years running, averaging roughly $3,500 each year, $24,500. Grandpa's funeral expenses that nobody else offered to cover, $6,800. Aunt Lorraine's 60th birthday party, $4,200. And then the long tail of emergencies. A broken furnace, a parking ticket, a bridesmaid dress for Megan's friend's wedding that somehow became my bill, a dental crown for Mom, deposits and late fees and grocery runs and on, $20,047. The cell at the bottom turned bold, $83,247. I stared at it. Then I opened a second column. Amount family has spent on Whitney, and typed a 0. My birthday last year, no one called, no card, no text, no dinner. Mom forgot. I heard Nathan's footsteps behind me. He sat down, looked at the screen, and didn't say anything for a long time. Then quietly, "What do you want to do?" I didn't answer him, not yet. The next morning, March 13th, I called Rosa Delgado. Rosa and I went back to undergrad. She was 33 now, a family law attorney with a small firm in Southeast Portland, the kind of friend who would pick up on the first ring at 7 a.m. and not ask why. I told her everything, the venue, the email, the 7 years, the number. She was quiet for about 10 seconds. Then she said, "Whitney, your mother impersonated your consent in writing to a third-party vendor. If Jill had acted on that email, you could have been on the hook for contract modifications you never authorized. That's not a family disagreement. That's misrepresentation of consent." The word misrepresentation landed in my chest like a brick. I'd spent my whole life calling it helping out. Rosa was calling it what it was. "Save everything," she said. "The forwarded email, the original, Jill's message. Screenshot your call log with your mother. And Whitney, whatever you decide, decide for you. Not for Diane." I hung up and made 3 calls in 40 minutes. First, Jill Pemberton. I confirmed the contract was untouched. Diane's email had triggered no changes because Jill, bless her professional instincts, had checked with me first. Then I told Jill I needed to invoke Section 7.2, cancellation before 8 weeks. The wedding date was June 14th. We were 13 weeks out, well within the window. Jill processed the request that afternoon. 80% of $14,000, $11,200, back in our account within 10 business days. Second, a resort in the Maldives I'd bookmarked months ago on a daydream scroll. Seaside Haven. 2-person beach ceremony package. Photographer, private villa. 3 nights. Total, $9,800. Third, Nathan. He answered, and before I could explain, he said, "Tell me when we leave." We booked flights for June 12th, Portland to Dubai to Malay. I told no one. 5 days later, on March 18th, I learned just how far ahead of me they'd been. A college friend tagged me in an Instagram story with a heart eyes emoji and the words "OMG double wedding?" I tapped through, confused, and there it was, Megan's story. A photo of a cream-colored invitation with gold foil lettering. Whitney and Nathan/Megan and Derek. June 14th, Ridgewood Estate. A double celebration of love. Megan's caption, 2 brides, 1 magical night. I zoomed in. The fonts were elegant. The layout was professional. These weren't mock-ups. These were printed invitations, the kind you order in bulk. And according to the comments rolling in under Megan's grid post, 150 of them had already been mailed. To friends, to extended family, to my co-workers at Hargrove and Ellis, to my boss. 150 people now believed I was happily sharing my wedding day with my cousin. 150 people had held that card in their hands and thought, "How nice, a double celebration." I called Nathan at his desk. He listened, then said, measured and calm, "They printed invitations before you said yes. That tells you everything you need to know about how they see you." He was right. In their version of reality, my agreement wasn't something they needed to obtain. It was something they assumed they already owned. I checked my records. The Ridgewood contract had been canceled on March 14th. Jill had sent a cancellation confirmation on the 15th to the email on file. Mine. The venue was gone. The catering tied to our booking was gone. But my family had no idea. They were building a party on a foundation that no longer existed. Rose's advice echoed, "Not yet, Maldives first, truth after," so I kept my mouth shut. And the clock kept ticking. March 22nd, the dress fitting. Mom had arranged it, her word, not mine, at a bridal boutique on Southwest Broadway, the kind of place with champagne flutes by the door and mirrors that run floor to ceiling. When I walked in, they were already there. Mom, Aunt Lorraine, Megan, and 2 other aunts whose names you don't need to remember. Everyone was smiling. Everyone had an opinion. Megan went first. 4 dresses. Each one drew gasps, applause, phone cameras raised like she was walking a runway. "Gorgeous," Aunt Lorraine said, dabbing her eye. "Absolutely breathtaking." Megan spun in front of the mirror, and the room orbited her the way it always had. When my turn came, Mom said, "Just pick something simple, honey. You're not the flashy type anyway." I stepped onto the platform in a white A-line. Classic clean, nothing wrong with it. The room was quiet. Nobody raised a phone. Lorraine examined her manicure. Megan glanced up from her own reflection and said, in a voice you'd use to compliment a child's finger painting, "Oh, want me to take a pic for you, Whitney?" I smiled and said, "Sure." One photo, taken from a low angle that caught the fluorescent light and half of Lorraine's shoulder. That was my fitting. In the restroom afterward, I locked the stall, sat on the closed lid, and texted Nathan, "I'm fine. 83 days. I'll wear this dress on a beach, not here." He sent back one line, "Then that dress is going to have the best day of its life." I washed my face, walked back out, and hugged my mother goodbye. It was the most deliberate performance I had ever given, and for the first time, keeping a secret from my family didn't feel like guilt. It felt like freedom. 3 days later, my phone lit up with a name I didn't expect. Grandma Eleanor. Eleanor Collier was 84, sharp as a tax audit, and living at Maple Grove Senior Residence in Salem, about an hour south of Portland. She was Mom's and Lorraine's mother, the woman who'd raised them both, and she almost never called. When she did, it meant something. "Whitney, sweetheart," she said. Her voice was thin but steady, the way old oak sounds when wind passes through it. "I got a pretty invitation in the mail, your name and Megan's name, both on there. I just want to ask you one question." "Okay, Grandma. Are you happy about it?" I pressed the phone hard against my ear. In 29 years, through every holiday dinner and every silent bank transfer, and every time I smiled when I wanted to scream, nobody in my family had ever asked me that. Not once. Not my mother, not Lorraine, not Megan, not Tyler. Nobody. Grandma Eleanor was the first. I couldn't answer right away because my throat had closed. 8 seconds of silence that she didn't try to fill. "Grandma," I finally said, "nobody asked me that. You're the first person." She let out a long breath. "I know my girls, Whitney. Diane and Lorraine, they're built like me in the worst ways. Always worried about what people see. But a wedding is yours, honey. It's not a stage for somebody else's show." I didn't tell her about the Maldives. I didn't tell her the venue was already canceled. I just said, "I'll be okay, Grandma. I promise." "I believe you," she said. And she meant it. After we hung up, I cried for the first time since the night I'd tallied the spreadsheet. Not from anger, from the simple, devastating relief of being seen by someone who actually cared whether I was happy. The last week of March, the pressure came from every direction at once. Mom called daily. Every conversation ended the same way, a hook pulled from the same guilt trip playbook I'd memorized by heart. "If you back out of the double wedding, you're telling me you don't respect this family. Aunt Lorraine says if you don't cooperate, she won't come, and Grandma won't come either." She wielded Grandma Eleanor's name like a hostage negotiator, and it made my stomach turn because I'd just heard Grandma's actual voice, asking the only question that mattered. Lorraine's attack came in writing. An email, subject line, family unity. 3 paragraphs of polished condescension. "In this family we share. If you choose to be selfish, you will isolate yourself. Your grandmother is 84 years old. She wants to see her family together. Are you really going to deny her that?" And then Megan sliding into my DMs with a message so perfectly passive-aggressive it could have been framed. "Hey, Whit just wanted to say I'm so excited about our double wedding. Derek and I are planning the sweetest surprise for you at the reception. Don't worry, I'll handle the decor half. You know I have better taste anyway." I screenshotted everything. Lorraine's email, Megan's message, my phone's call log showing 19 incoming calls from Mom in 7 days. I dragged every file into a folder on my desktop labeled 2025, March. Rosa had told me to save it all, and I did. When Mom called again that Sunday night, I kept my voice even. "I understand, Mom. I'll think about it." What I was really thinking about was a boarding pass dated June 12th and a beach ceremony 9,000 miles away. But she didn't need to know that. Not yet. April 5th, a Saturday. Dinner at Aunt Lorraine's house. 12 people around a long dining table. Lorraine at the head, naturally. Mom to her right. Megan and her fiancé Derek Voss across from me. Derek was 30, a real estate agent. Decent enough guy who always looked slightly uncomfortable at family events, like he'd wandered into someone else's reunion. Then there were 2 other aunts, an uncle, a few cousins, and Nathan beside me, his hand resting on my knee under the table. Lorraine clinked her glass before the salad course. "I'd like to raise a toast to our 2 brides." The room applauded. Megan beamed. I smiled and lifted my water. Mom leaned across the table. "Whitney, do you want to say something?" 12 pairs of eyes turned to me. I let one beat pass. Then, "I'm just really grateful to everyone here." True, diplomatic, committed to nothing. Megan wasn't done. She pulled out her iPad and propped it against the centerpiece. "I put together a mood board. Tell me what you guys think." She swiped through. White roses with gold accents, a massive floral arch, a custom photo booth, and there, centered on every frame, Megan and Derek in elegant script. Nathan's and my names appeared once, in the bottom right corner of a seating chart mock-up, 2 font sizes smaller. Nobody mentioned the difference. Maybe nobody noticed. Nathan noticed. I felt his knee press against mine once, firmly. On the drive home, he was quiet until we hit the freeway. Then he said, "Your name was 3 font sizes smaller than Megan's." "I know." "So you know you're making the right call." I stared out the windshield at the rain and didn't answer because I didn't need to. 2 months and 9 days. That was all I had to survive. April and May disappeared in a double life I never imagined I'd be living. On the surface, I attended 2 more family planning calls, nodded through a group text about table linens, and even approved a sample menu that Megan forwarded with a smiley face. Every interaction was theater, and I played my part with the calm precision of someone defusing a bomb by pretending it's a birthday present. Behind the curtain, Nathan and I built the real wedding piece by piece. Our flights were locked: Portland to Dubai, Dubai to Malé, June 12th. Seaside Haven Resort confirmed the 2-person ceremony package: beachfront at sunset, a local officiant, a photographer named Amir, who sent sample galleries that made my chest ache with how simple and beautiful it all looked. $9,800 total for 3 nights in an overwater villa, the ceremony, and a private dinner on the sand afterward. The refund from Ridgewood Estate, $11,200, had landed in our joint account on March 28th, exactly on schedule. Jill Pemberton's confirmation email sat in a folder I checked twice a week just to make sure it was still real. I quietly messaged about 15 close friends, not family, and told them the wedding plans had shifted and I'd share details soon. No one pushed. Real friends don't. I ordered a second wedding dress online, not the A-line from the boutique. That one was too tangled with Lorraine's smirk and Megan's condescending offer to take a photo. This one was chiffon, floor length, $380, designed for bare feet and warm wind. And then there was the spreadsheet. Rosa reviewed every page, cross-referencing bank statements I'd pulled. 14 pages. Airtight. She converted it to PDF and said, "You don't have to send this to anyone, but if you ever choose to, it's ready." If. That word carried a lot of weight. June 14th, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Ridgewood Estate, Portland, Oregon. I wasn't there. But I can tell you exactly what happened, because Nathan's friend Marcus was on the guest list. He'd received one of the 150 invitations, and he sat in his car across the parking lot and told us everything later, down to the minute. Guests began arriving at 3:45. Women in pastels, men in summer suits, the lawn freshly mowed, the Oregon sun actually cooperating for once. Aunt Lorraine swept in wearing a teal mother of the bride ensemble like she owned the property. Mom wore lavender. Megan was somewhere inside, reportedly in a $4,200 dress that Lorraine had quietly put on a credit card. By 4:15, people started checking their phones. The ballroom doors were closed. No coordinator at the entrance. No welcome table. By 4:20, Mom called me. Voicemail. She called again. Nathan's phone? Voicemail. 3 more attempts in 10 minutes. At 4:45, Jill Pemberton walked out to the garden where guests were milling in confusion. She approached my mother directly and spoke in the measured tone of someone who had rehearsed professionalism for decades. "Mrs. Collier, I need to inform you that the contract with Whitney Collier and Nathan Brennan was canceled on March 14th, per clause 7.2. We have no active booking under their names. The venue has been rebooked for a corporate event beginning at 7 p.m. Mom's face went white. "Canceled? I didn't know about any cancellation." "A confirmation was emailed to the address on file on March 15th, Jill said. "You may want to check your spam folder." By 5 o'clock, 200 guests stood on a manicured lawn with no ceremony, no catering, no music, and no bride. Megan was inside in her dress, mascara streaking, Derek rubbing his forehead beside her. And the venue had given them 90 minutes to leave. Here's what I need you to understand about time zones. The Maldives is 9 hours ahead of Portland. So while 200 guests were pulling into the Ridgewood parking lot at 4 p.m. Pacific, it was already 1 in the morning on June 15th where I was, and our wedding had happened 11 hours earlier. Let me take you there. 5:30 p.m. Maldives time, June 14th. The sun was low and copper-colored, throwing light across water so blue it didn't look real. I stood barefoot on white sand in the chiffon dress, the $380 one, and my toes sank with each small shift of weight. Nathan faced me in a white linen shirt and khaki pants, sleeves rolled to the elbow, no tie, no pretense. There were exactly 4 people present. Us, the officiant, a soft-spoken Maldivian man named Ismail who'd performed over 300 beach ceremonies, and the photographer Amir, crouching low to catch the light. Nathan's vows were short, and they wrecked me. "You are not anyone's ATM. You don't need permission to be happy. From today, I'm your family, and our family will never run on guilt. Mine were shorter. I spent my whole life waiting for someone to ask what I wanted instead of telling me what I owed. You were the first person who asked. You're my home. After the ceremony, we ate dinner on the sand, grilled fish, coconut rice, a bottle of sparkling water, because neither of us needed champagne to feel drunk on what we'd done. At 7 p.m. Maldives time, 10 a.m., in Portland. I posted one photo to Facebook and Instagram. Two people on a beach, golden light, no shoes. The caption, June 14th, 2025, just us. Just enough. No tags, no explanation. 6 hours before the chaos at Ridgewood even began. Now, before I continue, if you've made it this far and you're feeling any of this in your chest, I want you to know you're not alone. Thousands of people have sat where I sat, tallying up what they've given versus what they've received, wondering if they're allowed to say enough. If this story is speaking to you, do me a favor. Drop a comment, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. Because what happened next? It made everything before look like the opening act. All right. Back to June 14th, 9 p.m. Maldives time. I'd turned my phone off for the ceremony and kept it off through dinner. Nathan and I sat on the villa deck watching the dark ocean breathe, and for 3 perfect hours the world was exactly as small as we needed it to be. At 9 p.m., Maldives time, noon in Portland, I powered the phone back on. It took 45 seconds for the notifications to finish loading. 47 missed calls, 19 from Mom, 11 from Aunt Lorraine, 8 from Megan, 5 from Tyler, 2 from numbers I didn't recognize, 2 from Aunt Linda, 93 text messages. Mom's thread alone was a timeline of disintegration. The early ones, sent around 3 p.m. Portland time, were confused. Where are you? Everyone's waiting. By 4:30, they'd turned desperate. Whitney Collier, call me back right now. By 5, after Jill's announcement, they went nuclear. You canceled the venue? Have you lost your mind? And then the final message, sent at 5:47 p.m. 8 words that I read twice and will remember forever. You are no longer my daughter. We're done. Lorraine's thread was shorter and colder. You have destroyed Megan's most important day. There will be consequences. Megan, how could you do this to me? I'm standing in my wedding dress in an empty room. You ruined my life. Nathan read them over my shoulder. His jaw was tight, but his voice was steady. You don't have to answer tonight. Morning. I set the phone face down on the nightstand. The screen glowed through the wood for a few seconds, then went dark. I looked out at the ocean, and I want to be honest with you. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel triumphant either. I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, maybe ever. Light. Like something enormous had been lifted off my back. The phone rang at 3:12 a.m. I'd been drifting in and out of sleep, the kind of half-consciousness where your body rests, but your mind replays the day on a loop. Nathan was out cold beside me, breathing slow and even. The screen lit up with Mom, and I watched it pulse 4 times before I picked up. She didn't start with hello. Do you have any idea what I went through today? 200 people, Whitney. 200 people staring at me like I'm a fraud. I wanted to disappear into the floor. Her voice was raw, ragged, the sound of a woman who'd been yelling for hours and was now running on fumes. I sat up in bed. I could hear the ocean outside the villa. Mom, I never agreed to share the venue. Oh, don't start. You sent an email to our coordinator pretending I'd given consent. You printed 150 invitations with my name on them without calling me once. You turned my wedding into Megan's stage. That's because you're selfish. Family shares. You make good money. What does it cost you to help? You want to know what it's cost me, Mom? $83,247. That's what I've given this family in 7 years. Would you like me to go line by line? Silence. 8 full seconds. I counted. Don't you dare throw money in my face, she said, but the volume had dropped. She wasn't yelling anymore. I'm not throwing anything. I'm reading a spreadsheet I've kept since 2019. Every dollar, every transfer, every text message where you asked. She hung up. I set the phone down, pressed my palms against my eyes, and breathed. Nathan's hand found mine in the dark. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. I had said the number out loud for the first time, and she had no answer for it. The next morning, June 15th, 5 p.m. Maldives time, 8 a.m. In Portland, I opened my laptop on the villa desk, the Indian Ocean flat and turquoise behind the screen, and navigated to the Collier family group chat on Facebook Messenger. 24 members, every aunt, uncle, and cousin old enough to have an account. I typed slowly, editing twice before I hit send. I know everyone is angry, I understand, but before anyone judges what I did, I'm asking you to read the attached file. It's a record of every dollar I've spent on this family from 2017 to 2025. Every transfer, every receipt, every screenshot of a text asking for money. The total is $83,247. The amount this family has spent on me in the same period, $0. I'm not sending this to hurt anyone. I'm sending it because the truth deserves to exist somewhere other than my private hard drive. I attached the PDF. 14 pages. Rosa had reviewed it line by line against my bank statements before I left Portland. Page 1 was the summary, year-by-year totals, and a grand total in bold. Pages 2 through 13 broke it down. Date, amount, purpose, who requested it, and a thumbnail of the evidence, a bank transfer confirmation, a Venmo screenshot, a text message. Page 14 was a single table with 3 rows. Money. Whitney spent on family, $83,247. Money family spent on Whitney, $0. Number of times family said thank you, 0. I pressed send and closed the laptop. For 4 hours, nobody responded. I watched the read receipts tick upward, 5, 9, 14, 21. But the chat stayed silent. 21 people reading, not a single word typed. At noon Portland time, Aunt Linda broke the silence. Oh my God, I had no idea. 12:15. Uncle Greg. Whitney, I'm sorry, this is not okay. 12:30. Mom. You're airing family business in front of everyone. I will never forgive you for this. 12:32. Lorraine. Disgusting. You reduced everything to dollars and cents. But the rest of the chat stayed quiet. And in that silence, I heard something I'd never heard before from my family. The sound of people who couldn't argue with the math. The numbers started moving within 24 hours, and I tracked them the way I track everything, carefully. By the evening of June 16th, 8 of the 24 members had left the family group chat. Aunt Linda and Uncle Greg were among the first. 3 cousins I barely spoke to followed. Then 2 of Lorraine's bridge friends who'd been added years ago and probably wanted no part of the fallout. The chat that once pinged with holiday planning and birthday reminders was hemorrhaging members like a lifeboat with too many holes. Megan scrubbed her Instagram. The double wedding story vanished. The grid post with the gold foil invitation, gone. But the internet has a longer memory than Megan planned for. Screenshots had already been shared in comment threads. Her follower count dropped from 12,000 to 11,400 in 48 hours. People were asking questions she couldn't answer. Then came the call I didn't expect. Nathan's phone buzzed on the second night. Derek Voss. Man, Derek said, and I could hear it in his voice. The queasy realization of someone discovering the ground beneath him isn't solid. I didn't know the full picture. Megan told me Whitney was totally on board with everything. I feel sick. Nathan kept it clean. I appreciate you reaching out, Derek. This isn't about you. Meanwhile, Mom posted a public status on Facebook. When your own child turns their back on family, you learn who really loves you. It collected 14 likes, 3 sympathetic comments. But 7 people asked what happened, and when someone, I still don't know who, shared the spreadsheet PDF in the thread, 4 of the 14 likes quietly disappeared. And then Tyler texted me. My little brother, 22 years old, a kid I'd paid $7,200 to put through a certification program. His message was 1 paragraph long, and it cracked something open in my chest. I didn't know it was this bad, sis. I'm sorry I never said anything. I wrote back. You don't owe me an apology. Just remember, don't let anyone do to you what they did to me. By June 17th, Megan tried the only playbook she knew, the victim narrative. She posted an Instagram story, long, text-heavy, no filter for once, that opened with, "I've been going through something really hard and I just need grace right now." She talked about feeling blindsided and heartbroken without mentioning the forged email, the uninvited invitations, or the $31,000 in credit card debt that had made piggybacking on my venue so appealing in the first place. It might have worked if the spreadsheet hadn't already been circulating. Mutual friends, people who'd known both of us since college, left comments that were polite but pointed. "Didn't you know the venue was booked under Whitney's name?" And, "The spreadsheet is all over the family group chat, Meg." Megan deleted the comments, but screenshots traveled faster than her thumbs. The real aftershock, though, was Derek. He didn't break up with her. But on June 21st, he told Megan the wedding was on hold, indefinitely. His reason, relayed to Nathan in a brief phone call. "If your family lied to Whitney and let me believe she was fine with everything, what else don't I know? I need to understand what actually happened before I stand at an altar." They weren't over. But the trust was fractured, and Derek insisted on couples therapy before any new date would be set. Aunt Lorraine, predictably, blamed me. She called Aunt Linda and declared that I had sabotaged Megan's happiness. But Linda, quiet, overlooked Linda, sent Lorraine a private message that Whitney would only learn about weeks later. "Lorraine, I read the spreadsheet. Whitney paid $4,200 for your 60th birthday party. Did you know that?" Lorraine never responded, and Megan went silent on social media for 2 straight weeks, the first digital blackout in 5 years. For someone who'd built her identity on being seen, the silence said everything. The fallout for Mom was slower, quieter, and more devastating than anything that happened online. Within the week following June 14th, the story spread through the extended Collier Holloway network, roughly 40 people across 3 generations. The spreadsheet PDF was forwarded at least 5 times that I could track, though probably more. And the question everyone was asking wasn't, "Why did Whitney run?" It was, "Did Diane really take $83,000 from her own daughter?" The answer was 14 pages long, and nobody could dispute it. The first domino fell at Maple Grove. Grandma Eleanor called Mom. I wasn't on the line, but Tyler told me afterward, word for word, because he'd been in the kitchen when Mom took the call on speaker by accident. "Diane," Grandma said, "I raised you better than this. You used your daughter like a cash machine for 7 years. $83,000. I am ashamed." Mom cried. She cried for a long time. But she didn't argue. There was nothing to argue. The numbers were the numbers. The second domino fell at St. Andrew's, the church the Collier family attended every Sunday. People talked. Of course they talked. After 2 Sundays of being approached with careful questions and poorly hidden pity, Mom stopped lingering after service and started leaving through the side door. Then the third, and maybe the cruelest, Aunt Linda quietly volunteered to host Thanksgiving that year. "I think it's better if I handle it this time," she said, so gently it almost sounded like kindness. But everyone understood what it meant. For 20 years, Diane Collier had organized the family Thanksgiving. It was her one piece of visible authority, her proof that she mattered. And just like that, it was gone. Mom didn't call me for 3 weeks, the longest silence of my life. And the first one that didn't feel like punishment. It felt like breathing room. June 20th, Portland International Airport. Gate C12. Nathan and I walked off the jetway with tans we hadn't earned and a marriage license from a country most of my family couldn't find on a map. Our carry-ons were light. Everything else, the notifications, the voicemails, the wreckage, was heavy enough. The apartment smelled like stale coffee and the basil plant Nathan had forgotten to water. I set my bag down, opened the laptop, and the screen lit up like a switchboard. 214 Facebook notifications, 38 emails, 12 voicemails. The digital debris of a family implosion. I didn't open everything. Rosa had coached me before I left. "When you get back, triage. Only read what moves you forward. Everything else is noise." So I filtered. Rosa's messages, read. Tyler's, read. Grandma Eleanor's voicemail. 7 seconds, just her voice saying, "Welcome home, sweetheart." Jill Pemberton's final confirmation that the refund had been processed and the file was closed. Those 4. Everything else, I left blue and unread. Nathan heated leftover soup, the kind that comes from a can, nothing fancy. And we sat at the kitchen table where, 3 months earlier, I'd stared at a spreadsheet and felt the floor shift under my life. "So," he said, stirring his bowl, "we need to figure out who gets to be in our life, and on what terms." I pulled a legal pad from the drawer, the yellow kind, lined, the most unglamorous tool in the world, and wrote 2 words at the top: my boundaries. Not a declaration of war, not a revenge plan, just a list. A line drawn in ink by a woman who'd spent 29 years not knowing she was allowed to hold a pen. The question now was who would respect that line, and who wouldn't. Tyler's message arrived on June 22nd, 2 days after we got home. It wasn't a text. It was a full email, which for a 22-year-old felt almost ceremonial. "Whitney, I read the spreadsheet, all 14 pages. I saw the line, $7,200, Tyler's certification program. I didn't know that money came from you. Mom told me it was from her savings. She looked me in the eye and said she'd been putting it aside for years. I believed her. I'm not going to pretend I knew and stayed quiet. I genuinely didn't know, but I should have asked. I should have noticed that you paid for everything and nobody ever said your name at the table. I want to pay you back, not all at once. I'm on a part-time salary, but I'll figure out a plan. You'll get every dollar, I promise." I sat at my desk and read it twice. The second time, the line about Mom's lie hit different. She hadn't just taken my money. She'd taken credit for it. She'd let my brother believe she was the one sacrificing, while I quietly wired the funds and got nothing in return, not even the truth. I wrote back, "Tyler, you don't owe me money. You owe me nothing. But I'm going to ask you for something worth more than $7,200. Don't let anyone turn you into what they turned me into. If someone asks you for money and follows it up with tears and silence when you hesitate, that's not love. That's a system, and you deserve better." He called me that night. We talked for 40 minutes, the longest conversation we'd had in years. By the end, I'd invited him to dinner the following Saturday. He became the only family member on the weekly call list, the only one who didn't need conditions because he'd already met them. He told the truth, and he showed up. June 28th, a Saturday. I spent the morning drafting an email I'd been composing in my head since March. Rosa didn't write it for me. She offered, and I said no. This had to be my voice. But she reviewed it for clarity and tone before I hit send, the same way she'd reviewed the spreadsheet. Calm, factual, unassailable. Subject line, moving forward, my boundaries. "Mom, I love you. That's true, and nothing that happened changes it. But I can't continue a relationship where I am the one who gives endlessly and receives nothing back. Not money, not acknowledgement, not respect. For us to move forward, I need 3 things. 1. You acknowledge that sending an email to Jill Pemberton claiming I had agreed to share the venue was wrong. Not a miscommunication. Wrong. 2. You never again make a financial decision or sign anything on my behalf without my explicit written consent. 3. You stop comparing me to Megan, or to anyone. I am not a supporting character in someone else's story. If you're willing to meet these conditions, I'm here. We can rebuild. It won't be overnight, and it won't be the way things were before, because the way things were before nearly cost me everything. If you're not ready yet, that's okay too. I'll be here when you are, but I'll be here at a safe distance. Whitney." I read it aloud to Nathan before sending. He listened without interrupting, then said, "That's the strongest thing you've ever written." I clicked send at 11:04 a.m. The read receipt came back at 9:47 p.m., nearly 11 hours. I could picture her reading it at the kitchen table, maybe rereading it, maybe sitting with it the way I'd sat with the spreadsheet that night in March. She didn't respond. 1 day passed, then a week, then 2. And for the first time, her silence didn't crush me. It just confirmed what I already knew. The next move was hers, and I was done performing. Lorraine's response came on July 2nd. One final email, 5 sentences, no warmth. Whitney, you have destroyed this family. Your spectacle was selfish, your spreadsheet was manipulative, and your absence from that venue humiliated people who have loved you your entire life. I have nothing more to say. Do not contact me again. I read it once, forwarded it to Rosa for the file, and didn't reply. Some doors close themselves, and the kindest thing you can do is let them. Megan's message arrived 3 days later, on July 5th. It was longer, messier, and harder to dismiss. Whitney, I know I owe you an apology. I knew about the email Mom sent to the coordinator. I knew about the invitations before they were printed. I should have said something. I'm sorry. Then the second paragraph. But you could have just talked to us instead of disappearing. You could have told me to my face. That hurt. I sat with it for a day before responding. When I did, I kept it to 2 sentences. I spent 7 years talking to this family, Megan. It cost me $83,247 and zero respect. Talking didn't work. She didn't write back. A week later, Derek called Nathan one more time. His voice was different, tired, but less rattled than before. Megan and I started couples therapy, he said. I think we both have a lot to figure out. I just wanted you to know. Nathan said, I respect that. Good luck, man. When he hung up, I asked if he thought Megan would actually change. He shrugged. Maybe, maybe not. That's not your variable to solve. He was right. Lorraine would never see it. Megan might someday. And I was learning something I wish I'd understood a decade earlier. Healing doesn't require everyone to apologize. It only requires you to stop waiting for them to. July 19th. A Saturday evening. Our apartment. Nathan made pasta, garlic, olive oil, cherry tomatoes, the kind of meal that takes 20 minutes and fills the room with the smell of something honest. I tossed a salad. Rosa brought a bottle of red and a corkscrew because she said she didn't trust ours. Tyler showed up with a bottle of wine too, a $12 Pinot Noir, and handed it to me with a look that was half shy, half proud. Bought it with my own paycheck, he said, not from anyone else's savings. Hannah Park, a colleague from Hargrove and Ellis who'd become one of my closest friends in the past year, arrived with brownies. Marcus, Nathan's college roommate, the same Marcus who'd witnessed the Ridgewood disaster from the parking lot, brought garlic bread and a story about finding a bewildered catering truck circling the venue that evening with nowhere to unload. 6 people around a table meant for 4. Elbows touching, plates passed hand to hand, conversations overlapping in the way that only happens when no one is performing. Nobody mentioned Mom. Nobody mentioned Lorraine or Megan or the spreadsheet or the 200 guests or the Maldives. We talked about Marcus's new job, Rosa's impossible client, Tyler's plan to take night classes in the fall, the fact that Nathan had finally killed the basil plant beyond resuscitation. 3 hours, the easiest 3 hours I'd had in years. When everyone left and Nathan and I were rinsing plates at the sink, I looked at the table. Empty glasses, crumbs, a stain from where Tyler knocked over the salad dressing, and thought, this is 6 people, not 24, not 200, 6. And every single one of them chose to be here. Total cost of the evening, $47. The cheapest family dinner I'd ever hosted, and the first one where I didn't pay alone. 5 weeks of silence, and then, on August 2nd, my phone rang. I was at the kitchen counter chopping peppers for a stir-fry. Nathan was on the couch reviewing code. The screen said Mom and I stared at it for 3 full rings before I answered. Her voice was small. Not the furious rasp of the 3 a.m. call, not the weaponized grief of the guilt trips. Small. The way a person sounds when they've been sitting alone with something heavy and have finally decided to set it down. Whitney, I read your email. I've read it several times. Okay, Mom. I need you to know I don't want to lose you. A pause, a breath that shook. I'm not good at this. I know. Another pause. I could hear the clock in her kitchen, the one with the rooster face that had hung above the stove since I was 9. The email I sent to the coordinator, I shouldn't have done that. It was wrong. She said the word wrong like she was swallowing a stone. I convinced myself you'd come around, that you'd see it was for the best, but I should have asked you. I know that now. I leaned against the counter and closed my eyes. She hadn't addressed the comparisons. She hadn't acknowledged the invitations. She'd met one of 3 conditions, partially, with visible effort. "Thank you, Mom. That matters. That's a start." Does that mean we can talk again?" "It means the door is open, but the conditions in my email still stand, all 3. And I won't remind you again. You already have them in writing." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Okay." We talked for 4 more minutes about nothing. The weather, a neighbor's new dog. Ordinary words stretched carefully over extraordinary damage. After I hung up, Nathan looked at me from the couch. "How do you feel?" She apologized for 1 thing out of 3. It's not enough. But it's the first time she's used the word wrong about her own behavior in my entire life. I set the knife down. I'll take the crack in the wall. I'm not knocking it down for her. By mid-August, 2 months after the Maldives, I sat down and did what I do best. I ran the numbers. Not on my family this time, on myself. Since June 14th, with no more emergency transfers, no catering bills for someone else's party, no mysterious deposits into relatives' accounts, my savings had increased by $4,800 in 8 weeks. That was more than I'd saved in any comparable stretch over the previous 7 years. The math was obscene in its clarity. The single biggest drain on my finances had never been rent, or student loans, or Portland's cost of living. It had been my family. The other metrics shifted too. Number of guilt trip phone calls received since the boundary email, 0. Number of stressful family dinners attended, 0. Number of evenings spent with people who actually wanted me at the table, 6. The pasta night, 2 weekend brunches with Rosa, a Friday movie marathon with Tyler at our apartment, and 2 date nights with Nathan where neither of us checked our phones. At work, something was changing that I could feel but couldn't name until my boss, Margaret, pulled me aside after a client presentation in early August. "Whitney, I've noticed a real shift in you these past couple of months. More confident, more decisive. Whatever's going on, keep it up." 2 weeks later, the promotion came through. Senior financial analyst. Salary, $104,000. A $12,000 raise that felt like more than money. It felt like proof that when you stop pouring yourself into a hole, you start rising. Nathan and I sat down that weekend and set a new target. $60,000 for a down payment on our first house. At our current savings rate, free from the family tax, we'd hit it within 2 years. And then, on August 15th, Tyler sent a Venmo notification. $200. The memo line read, "Installment 1 of 36, certification tuition. Thank you, sis." I stared at that memo line until the screen went blurry, and I didn't wipe my eyes because some tears you earn. On August 10th, I did something I hadn't done in years. I wrote a letter by hand, not an email, not a text. I sat at the kitchen table with a sheet of cream stationery Nathan had bought me as a just because gift, and I picked up a pen, a real one, blue ink, the kind that forces you to slow down and mean every word. "Dear Grandma, you were the first person who asked me if I was happy. I want you to know, I am. My wedding had 2 people. No ballroom, no 200 chairs, no gold foil invitations. Just a beach, a sunset, and a man who asks me every morning what I need instead of what I owe. I'm sorry you didn't get to be there, but I think you understand why it had to happen the way it did. You told me once that family is the person who asks if you're happy. You were right, and I need you to know, by that definition, you are my family. You always have been. I'm enclosing a photo. It's me and Nathan on the beach. I'd love it if you kept it somewhere you can see it. I love you. Whitney." I slid the Maldives photo, the one from the ceremony, printed on matte cardstock, into the envelope, addressed it to Maple Grove Senior Residence in Salem, and dropped it in the mail on my way to work. 3 days later, my phone rang. "Grandma Eleanor." I picked up immediately. "Sweetheart," she said, and her voice was warmer than sunlight. "I hung your picture right next to my bed. You're beautiful. Nathan's a good-looking man. And the ocean? My goodness, it looks like a painting." "It felt like one, Grandma." "I believe that." A soft pause. "You chose right, Whitney. Don't let anybody tell you different." I promised her I wouldn't, And I meant it the way you mean something you've paid $83,000 to learn. So, that's my story. I know some of you are going to call it a revenge story. I understand why. A cancelled venue, an empty ballroom, a spreadsheet heard around the family group chat, it has all the ingredients. But sitting here now, 8 months removed from that beach in the Maldives, I don't think revenge is the right word. Revenge is when you want someone to suffer. What I wanted was something quieter and harder than that. I wanted to stop disappearing. I wanted the truth on the table instead of locked in a private Excel file. I wanted my wedding day to belong to me. If any of this sounds familiar, if you're the person who picks up every check and never gets thanked, the one who drops everything when the phone rings and then wonders why no one calls on your birthday, the one who has been told your whole life that setting a boundary is the same thing as being selfish, then I need you to hear this. You are not selfish for choosing yourself. You are not cruel for saying no. And you are not alone. $83,247 and 7 years. That was my tuition. I hope your lesson costs you less, but whatever the price, it's worth it. Because on the other side of that boundary, there's a table with people who actually want you sitting there. Trust me. I'm at mine right now. Here's my question for you, and I mean it. Drop your answer in the comments. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? A. Cancel everything and fly to the Maldives the way I did. B. Confront the whole family at the venue in front of 200 people. Or C. Stay quiet and go through with it. I want to hear your answer. And if this story hit home, share it with someone who needs it today. There's another story waiting for you in the description. I think you'll feel that one too. Thank you for staying with me until the end. That means more than you know.